So, seen any good moves lately? Welcome back to Seen Any Good Moves Lately. I'm your host, Joey Olberding, and today I have with me to discuss All Wild Episode 3 of Survivor 48, somebody who's a bit of a wild man himself. I'm bringing in my brother, Greg. How's it going, Greg?
It's going great. Thank you for having me on the show, Joey.
Yes, yes. Well, I always think that nepotism is a dying breed, so I figured I should get you on here, just to give you a shot, give you something to do. So yeah, but I'm very excited to talk about this episode. But Greg, I just want to know before we really dive into the episode, what your general thoughts on the season have been so far up to this point.
Yeah, I think that in many ways this has been pretty in line with my experience with the new era so far. I think I really like the 90-minute format. I just think it's got so much more time to breathe. It's actually kind of wild to think that the previous format allowed us to have reward challenges and immunity challenges and beach life, because now it just every time it seems like, well, there's more that I wanted to see that got edited out. So I'm really enjoying that part of it. I think the cast is really solid. I think, you know, the the producers have really taken to heart this criticism that things were a little bit kumbaya a couple seasons ago, and they've cast some slightly more evil people, which I appreciate. Um, and yeah, I mean, strategically, it's been kind of a slog, I guess. It's just kind of been a beating. But I do think that, you know, I I'm excited to see what comes next, because I think that post merge and, now spoiler alert, post swap, there could be some really interesting things that go down based on the dynamics that have already arisen. So that's my basic 2 cents.
Yeah, no, that is something I appreciate though. You mentioned the fact that things are a lot less kumbaya than they used to be, and like I certainly agree with you. And like that's inarguably like a good thing I think for the show. There's more interesting dynamics that way. Like if you don't cast a say on the season, like the Green Tribe is not only the tribe that keeps losing, but they're also probably going to be pretty boring.
Right.
Um, but yeah, no, I appreciate that, especially versus 41 or 42 or 43 or blah 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 whatever, like the after 46 with like Venus and Q and people like that, like now that they're just more argumentative people on the show, like it's a lot more interesting week to week, I think, when
Yeah.
um I don't necessarily think Survivor needs that to be great. Like 45 didn't really have that. Like D won that, and like I didn't really think that that season was that argumentative, but I still thought it was great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
And I do think, though, that that was the beginning of the turn away from that. I feel like Survivor 44 was kind of the peak of that. Um, you
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
the Tika 3, is that what they were called?
Yes, yes, correct.
I mean, they were such a, they were interesting characters. I especially loved watching Carolyn and Jam Jam play, but they were there was not very much in the way of interpersonal conflict.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'm enjoying that it's getting a little bit back to its messy roots.
Yeah, I mean the most argumentative that 44 got that I recall is me, being mad at my TV whenever Carson was speaking, but that's about it. Um, But anyways, let's get into this episode a little bit. So after Tribal Council, where we had Kevin get voted out, and sort of a surprise Tribal Council since he was I guess sort of the brawn of the tribe, which is crazy because compared to the other two tribes, he was nothing. But he gets voted out. Did you have any thoughts on that, him getting voted out over anybody else, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, to your point about him being the brawn, there's two things I'd say to that. And one is that one, he was injured. I mean,
Yeah.
it's become clear in post-game interviews, particularly with Justin that I've watched, that was actually a huge piece that was sort of under discussed in the edit, that Kevin dislocated his shoulder. They popped it back in. It was fine, but he continued to just be in a lot of pain. And so I think that was an acknowledged thing in the final product of the episode, because I, as a viewer, I sort of felt like, well, he got hurt, but he's okay now. But actually, that was he had physically deteriorated, and I think that was an impetus for it. And the other thing I'd say is I've seen some speculation that, like, maybe on some level, some of these tribes are actually imbalanced by design.
Yeah.
On that, perhaps the producers are actually setting one of the tribes up for failure, more or less, in terms of who gets dealt onto those tribes, physically speaking.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's any truth to that, and obviously there's more to winning challenges than just the pure physical component of it. But looking back at episode 1 and just seeing the initial sorting of those tribes, who else would it be but Kevin? Who's
Yeah.
kind of he's a fit guy, but he's not particularly muscular or large or anything like that.
Mhm. Yeah, I've read up a little bit about this idea of the tribes in the new era being imbalanced on purpose, and from what I can tell, there is truth to that. Because think about it like this: Survivor is back in Fiji. They go to Fiji every season. They're on the same beaches every season, but not every beach has the same amount of stuff. One of the beaches has like papayas and coconuts and all this food. One of the beaches has literally nothing, and one beach has, I don't know, maybe just a few coconuts spattered about. But from what I can tell, the tribes that are the physically weakest, such as the Green tribe, would be the ones who get to that beach with all the papayas and coconuts and stuff, while probably the more stereotypically strong tribes, like I guess in this case maybe the Orange tribe, are probably on the beach that has less and less food because Survivor believes that evens things out. When in reality, I think we've seen over the new era there tends to be a disaster tribe. So
Yes.
I don't think that's really true.
Yeah, I think last season maybe was the first time that it seemed like there was more or less parity between the three tribes. Um,
Yeah.
and I think it makes for more interesting television when that's the case. Uh, it's not super interesting to watch a rich get richer uh, kind of
Yeah.
dynamic. Especially, I was thinking about this with the doing away of reward challenges. There's an association in previous eras of Survivor between winning a reward challenge and winning an immunity challenge, because maybe you get fed, maybe
Mhm.
you get a better night's sleep, etc. But they were ultimately independent challenges, and the loser of one had the chance to be the winner of another. Now, the same tribes that are winning immunity are also by definition winning reward, because those are bundled into one. So I think that not only is there not this level of parity, but the design of the game, not to mention Jeff taking away their flint and everything like that, it really serves to widen these disparities. And of course, we see disaster tribes, given all that. Now, I don't know about this theory about the beaches being differently endowed with papayas and things like that. Um, but that also seems like a solvable problem, like
Yeah.
if they really wanted to, they could make the beaches a little bit more fair in some way, but they don't. So yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, I definitely think it leads to more inequality within the tribes. But anyways, going back to the episode, so Kevin gets voted out, and back at camp, it's sort of honestly the same old, same old. Mary is on the bottom. Say is overconfident, shall we say? And Justin and Cedric are just kind of there. And it's fine, it's cool. But then that later that day, um Mary is out there looking for an idol, and Say is following her around, and Mary keeps like trying to avoid and run away from Say in the search for the idol. And this is something that I think is interesting. This idea when you're so clearly on the bottom, how do you possibly, find your way out if everybody's clearly against you? I think finding an idol is risky, but I think Mary probably played it about as well as she could have, which is, run away and then eventually just kind of quote unquote admit defeat.
Right. And we'll get to latter part of the episode
Mhm.
later. But yeah, I mean, what choice did she have? You know, of course she has to look for an idol. She knows that there's one around because Say played hers. So there's not any uncertainty, you know, that somebody else might have it. No, like literally last night somebody played it. Um, and also, I think the other thing that it serves to do, which comes up later, is it kind of keeps the majority on their toes a little bit. You know,
Mhm.
Say, as we've found, is a very volatile player. She comes back from that tribal council, uh, having just played her idol based on a tip from Cedric,
Mhm.
saying, "I don't think I trust Cedric anymore." And as I'm watching this, I was baffled. I was, what is she talking about? Like, this guy just tipped you off that there were votes going your way, and 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 you play your idol, and sure enough, votes had gone your way. And I mean, and you trust him less because of that. Now, upon revisiting this, what I realized was actually going on in Say's mind was I played my idol unnecessarily.
Mhm.
And the fact that Cedric had me play my idol was perhaps him trying to get it out of my hands. You know, I
Yeah.
think that's where she was coming to it from. I don't know. Would you agree with that?
I think that's definitely how she interpreted it. To me, I don't think it was a bad idol play though at all. I don't think every idol play needs to negate votes and keep you from actually going home. I think what Say did, I mean, I don't know if she did it on purpose, but I think what she did is smart because in that episode, Cedric says to her, "Your name is out there. You should play your idol tonight." And Say goes, "Okay, I'm going to play my idol at this tribal council no matter what." And even though the votes weren't on Say, she still did it, and she still did negate that vote, which to me says that like you can play that off as like, you know what, I'm a loyal ally and I stick to my word, and you know, like maybe it wasn't the ideal idol play, but I still did it because I said I would. But
Right.
I
I
don't.
mean, Cedric knew how his own vote was going to go, and perhaps he had a good idea of where Justin's vote was going to go, but he didn't know what was in store. You know,
Mhm.
he didn't know that Say wasn't going to be voted out. So he obviously considered her a strong enough or important enough ally, wanted her in the game badly enough to tell her. Um, and she kind of came up with the most bad faith possible interpretation
Yeah.
of that move.
Yeah.
You know, is it's good to think about those things, so I won't fault her there. But going back to this episode, you know, then as she's kind of babysitting Mary, following her through the woods, she's saying, "Well, not only do I need to prevent Mary from getting an idol for obvious reasons, but I need to find the idol myself because I just had a bad idol play."
Yeah, I definitely think like when it comes to idols and stuff like that, like especially since idols in general in the new era, like the first time there's an idol on the beach, it's so difficult to get them. Like you have to solve a puzzle and look at, you know, fish on a tree or whatever they're doing. Um the fact that the second idol usually doesn't have those caveats and usually is just a straight up idol, I think makes the hunt all the more serious for one, but also a lot more like able to induce paranoia because unlike those first idols where you kind of need to rely on somebody to get them, or at least it's really hard to get them without somebody else figuring it out, getting an idol without having to go through, you know, the little fun games or whatever to get it, is really something that I think is able to create paranoia, and we saw that in this episode, especially with Say.
Yeah, your point about needing to rely on others for the beware advantages is very true. I think especially this season, more so than I've seen in the past. You know, there's been kind of one-off here and there. Like, what was it? Cody on
Yeah,
Survivor 42 was that?
43, I think, but yeah.
43. Oh, I should know that. I'm wearing my Survivor sweater. Um, who had to go and convince everybody of something. But here, everybody who's gotten one of these beware advantages has gone to somebody else on their tribe and been like, "Can you help me out?" Star still has not figured out how to open up her little Da Vinci Code thingamabob.
Yeah.
And, thankfully her tribe is strong and she hasn't had to go to tribal yet, but so eventually she's gonna have to have that or else she won't get a vote.
Yeah, let's talk about Star because Star is in a weird position on her tribe, where she is perpetually both at the bottom, but also like not in the worst position on the tribe. Because in this episode, she's still looking for the Spaware advantage, and everybody on her tribe knows about it, including Eva, who she does not want to know about it. But everybody knows about it, and they're all kind of like, I don't really want to help. Which I think is, first of all, an interesting decision on like Shaheen's part, who's sort of masterminding that whole thing. But Star's just kind of perpetually on the bottom, but also like the fact that she could get an advantage could propel her to like more of the middle. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on the entirety of that purple tribe right now?
Yeah, it's a real interesting thing. I mean, because you've got the California Girls Alliance, I think they're calling it,
Mm-hmm.
which consists of Shaheen, Thomas, and Joe, which is kind of an odd trio, but they are all dudes from California, and I guess that's enough. And meanwhile, Thomas has his female sidekick in Bianca. Joe has his female sidekick in Eva. I'm of course being a little bit facetious in saying that. I think both of them have plenty of agency and all that, but so they have their own kind of side plans with these other members of their tribe, and that leaves Star, who is just kind of there, fiddling with her advantage.
Something I liked in this episode was when talking about the California girls and mentioning that, they got together because all three of them were from California. Shaheen literally says, like, this is stupid or something like that. Just like everybody could be from the same state. California's a big place, but,
Yeah, and the way that Survivor casting works, everybody's from California.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But
California or New York or Boston or blah, 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 blah. You don't get a lot of rural people nowadays in Survivor.
No, which I want to see more of Chrissy. She's not rural. She's from south side of Chicago. She will specify which side of Chicago she's from, but more, blue collar working class people. I'm enjoying that David has gotten some screen time talking about his, cool blue collar job, his kind of financial struggles, living in the trailer in front of his dad's house. That's not a perspective that we've seen a ton of in the new era.
No, that's something that honestly, like I was trying to think back, like have I ever seen something like that? Like it's a really unique story, honestly, even for Survivor, because not only is he saying, yeah, I'm 38 or whatever, and I'm living on a trailer in the yard of my parents, and that sucks. But he's also saying, like, basically, if I don't win this money, my girlfriend is gonna break up with me. Which, yeah, it's a lot.
As Camilla points out, he's a Chad, and well, that's the narrative anyway. And she doesn't talk about the corollary to the Chad, which is, of course, the virgin. And what's implicit here is that if David doesn't win Survivor, if he doesn't get that mill, then the Chad will become the virgin because his would-be trad wife would then leave him for some other kind of Sigma Chad. And, these are horrible words. I can't believe they're coming out of my mouth. But
but when you put it like that, it's a rich tapestry of language.
It is. It's a new kind of sob story.
It's a new era of sob story.
New era.
I do think it's interesting. We really didn't get a lot from Orange this episode. I mean, we had this interesting thing with David, but they were definitely, if you want to go back to what we were saying about the kumbaya of it all, they are the kumbaya tribe. They are, we're so happy. We share all our advantages with each other. We haven't really played Survivor yet. We're just kind of here. You know what I mean?
I mean, jumping ahead a little bit, but Camilla comes back from this journey and she's got an extra vote and she tells everyone and she's like, well, I wouldn't like to tell everybody about my advantage in theory, but my tribe, we tell each other everything. So what choice do I really have? And that is just not how it has to be. Camilla
Yeah.
could unilaterally decide I will be the scheming eunuch in this Kumbaya tribe, uh, but no, and I think uncoincidentally they are by far the most boring tribe to watch
Hmm.
thus far. You've got David, who's an interesting personality, and that's about it. There's really not too much else to say.
Yeah. David's definitely probably the most interesting. I like Camilla a lot, but we haven't really seen her do anything so far.
No,
And then
yeah, she's a good narrator. I will say, and
yeah,
I think she's got potential, but we just haven't seen the kind of cutthroat or gameplay side of her yet.
yeah, and Charity, we like haven't seen anything from except apparently, everybody wants her out. Chrissy, as you mentioned, we've seen nothing from, and Mitch, we've seen a good deal from, and but I could still kind of take or leave him. So there are some people who are really up on him, and like I understand because of his speech impediment, but as a Survivor personality, he hasn't really given me all that much.
No, to me, he's exactly the heart of the Kumbayanis of their tribe.
Hmm.
He's the one who's saying like, "Great job, guys! Like, I'm so proud of us. We beat the other guys in the challenge, and we built a fire, and we built a shelter, and we're doing great." And that's great. I mean, I would love if a guy like him had been my gym teacher. But I am not convinced that he is going to be a good player or even frankly a good character. I'll just have to see it.
Yeah, I think yeah, we'll have to see. Obviously, the game for Orange hasn't really started yet, but I Mitch just kind of seems like to me a generic like sort of I don't know if he's older, but he has the older sort of mentality of like we're doing this as a team. Like I think back to Survivor Amazon and Butch with the firewood. He reminds me of Butch, like bringing everybody together and like we're gonna do this together as a team. Very like gym teacher esque, as you said.
Well, if I recall, Butch was also an educator.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
So I think that there's definitely something to that. And yeah, I mean, Mitch seems like a great person to have on your tribe, but yeah, to me, it's just hard to see where he goes once the situation has changed.
Hmm.
Seems like he's got a decent alliance going on with Charity. She strikes me as much more astute and much more willing to do what it takes to get further in the game than he does. But I could be bamboozled. He could be absolutely playing me like a fiddle, portraying himself as this kind of happy-go-lucky, super ultra positive guy when really the gears are turning in his head
Yeah.
somewhere.
I want to ask you this. This is an aside, but I trust you to know the answer to this. Charity. Is it a real name? I've never met anybody named Charity in my life, and it feels kind of like a weird name to give your child. You know what I
What
mean?
it reminds me of like the Puritans in like the colonial Bay colony,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
sure, sure.
naming their children like temperance or obedience, things like that.
Yeah,
Like these very divine, socially conservative virtues. If I recall, she did have sort of a religious upbringing, which uh, she kind of decided to do away with at a certain point in her life.
okay. That
Uh,
makes sense.
ran away from home and became a flight attendant. I think if I'm recalling my pregame
That's
bio,
interesting. I didn't know that. I wonder if we'll get that story later on.
yeah,
Because yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, we'll have to see.
So but I do think that that kind of thing, naming your child after a virtue, is very, yeah, it's pretty 1600s Christian coded.
Yeah, I just, as you know, I go to school in the middle of Missouri, straight in the middle. A whole lot of red out here, and I have never met anybody named Charity. Like you'd think I would have at this point. There are 30,000 students that go here. You'd think one of them would be named Charity, but no. But it's also like a name that doesn't sound that weird when you first hear it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, my friend's name is Charity, and it's like, oh okay, hi Charity. But then like you think about it, and it's like if your parents give you that name, like, isn't that like a little like narcissistic, or you know what I mean? Like, oh, it's such a charity I'm giving my child by naming them Charity. They're gonna be so giving or whatever. I don't know. I think it's a little weird. Anyways.
Yeah, I don't think she asked for her name. She is, she strikes me as somebody who, not to say that she is not a giving or caring person, but she strikes me as somebody who's going to do what it takes to get further in this game.
Yeah. I did want to go back to purple for a moment because there was one other thing that I thought was interesting, which is Eva. Eva decided that I know about Star's advantage, and so I'm going to go up to Star and I'm going to talk to her and I'm going to see if I can figure out, basically, if she's lying to me directly. And of course, Star does in fact lie to Eva. And then Star goes back to basically everybody else in the tribe and says, hey, Eva is trying to work with me. She's trying to work with me and is going behind your backs, to try to work with me. And it's like, you can't trust her. We need to get rid of her. And it made me think, like, did Eva do the right thing? Did she have to do this to try to figure out if Star was sussing her out? Because I feel like she probably didn't have to do that, considering that they're both sort of against each other regardless. But I don't know.
Yeah, that is a really fascinating scene, and I'd be curious to hear your take on this too. To me, that almost struck me as Eva trying to calculate a move. And we talk about, X or Y being a calculated move. In her case, she's been very open about her autism and how that makes it difficult for her to read certain social cues. And I think that this was her almost creating a flow chart in her mind of saying, I want to go have this interaction with Star in order to accomplish this goal and glean this information. And those being, I want to see if she will trust me, and I want to see or I want to show her that I'm willing to work with her, even though that's not quite true. And she goes through this whole conversation, I think, like, okay, Star responded to my question in this way, therefore I will ask this other question, which I've sort of premeditated. And I don't mean this as a criticism of Eva at all, because she does suffer, maybe suffers the wrong word. She does have autism, and she finds these things difficult, or they don't come as easily to her as for people without autism. And I think that her thought process behind it was good, but her execution of it was not good, because Star saw right through it. She said, Eva hasn't talked to me at all about the game up to this point, and now she just comes up to me and starts suggesting that we throw out, this person because we don't need two people who are good at puzzles. That's obviously BS. I am not going to fall for that. And she's right. And Eva, sees that Star lies to her, and she thinks, okay, what I thought about Star is also right, that she doesn't trust me, doesn't want to work with me. So at the end of the day, neither of them gleaned any new information about the other, and it probably only deepened the division between them.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, frankly, like, if we're being real, I kind of think it's a net neutral. Like, I at first I thought that Star got some sort of advantage with being able to go back to her tribe and saying, Eva said this to me, but I think realistically, Shaheen and Joe and Thomas and Bianca, they all know that Eva's not going to work with Star, and they all know that Eva isn't trying to work with Star. The thing about Eva that makes her a good ally is that she does wear her heart on her sleeve, which can be a very powerful thing in an ally, because you know that they're not going to go against you and they're not going to blindside you, which is something you can't say about anybody else on the tribe, even Joe. So I don't really think it did anything, but it did create a little bit of drama and a little bit of, hopefully we'll see where that storyline goes further on in the season. But
yes, kind of simmering rivalry, which could lead to some fun results.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely excited to see how that goes. Let's go to this reward immunity challenge. Well, this immunity challenge that has a reward to it. And it's a real Survivor classic. It is everybody's blindfolded, and that you have a collar, and they say go this direction, go. And I like this challenge. It's a real Survivor staple. Um, I believe the colors were Shaheen for purple. I think no, I can't remember. Um,
I
I don't
Purple
remember.
is the one that I'm struggling to remember. It was definitely Camilla on orange and
Mhm.
Cedric. Was it
Yes,
Cedric?
it was Cedric. Yeah.
On Cedric on green.
And I believe it was Shaheen, but I could be wrong. Anyways, so it's those three colors, and they're going out. And do you have any thoughts on this challenge? It's kind of a Survivor staple, but yeah,
It is. I mean, I'm not. I don't primarily watch Survivor for the challenges. I'll just be honest about that.
no,
This is a funny one because it actually lends itself to quite a bit of physical comedy,
Mhm.
and the sheer frustration that it causes, on the part of the callers, on part of the blindfolded people who have no idea where they're going or what's going on. It's kind of like chickens with their heads cut off
Mhm.
in certain places. You see David kind of run into the obstacles with his testicles. There's funny stuff going on.
Yeah.
Um, and as far as challenges go, yeah, there's a reason it's a classic.
Hmm. Yeah. The thing that really struck me about this challenge, if any, was the way that Joe started it out because he was blindfolded, and as soon as the challenge starts, he just kind of waddles in the right direction, like, and does it accurately and gets to his station like immediately. And I was thinking in the back of my mind, like, first of all, very impressive, great job, Joe. Shouts out to Joe Solidarity. But beyond that, like, how is that like a skill? Like, how do you do that? Like, can anybody do that? Because I feel like being a fire captain probably helps with that, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there's probably ways that you can orient yourself. Like if you uh, think about what direction the sun is in, like okay,
Mm,
I know the sun is over here, and even though I'm blindfolded, I can still uh, figure out what direction I'm facing just based on where the light is coming through.
it's smart.
Uh, that's something that I would think about. Also, I mean, obviously, if you just like plant your feet like, okay, I'm facing the direction I need to go, and then they blindfold you. Now, I'm assuming off camera, I would hope that they spin them around or something in order to make
Sure.
that a little bit easier or less easy for the blindfolded people. Uh, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it does have something to do with him being a firefighter. It's you probably do get trained in orienting yourself so that you don't lose your way in a burning building that you've never been in before.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
That makes sense. This challenge just reminds me of an old episode of Mythbusters that has stuck with me throughout the years, where it's very simple. It's basically just like, if you are blindfolded, can you walk in a straight line? And the answer is no. And that's stuck with me whenever I'm moving and I can't see for any reason whatsoever. And so when I see Joe just kind of waddle in the right direction, I'm like, how did he do that? You're not supposed to be able to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, he didn't have that far to go. I mean, do you remember from this episode of Mythbusters, like how long or how many steps
Yeah.
you're supposed to take before you veer off course?
So, as I recall, they were in like a giant field, just like a field with nothing, and they said walk this direction. And I believe that they went the right direction for like maybe the first, I don't know, 30 seconds or something like that. But after that, they veered off course, and by the end, they were completely like perpendicular to where they started.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
yeah, I don't know. But that I just wanted to say that is something that's stuck with me
Yeah,
throughout
it was very
time.
impressive, and it his tribe ended up winning, I believe.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
good on him.
Purple ends up winning. Of course, orange gets second. Same old results as ever. And the challenge is over. Green has lost yet again. And it's not just as simple as Green goes back to tribal council because they get to pick people for a journey. Bianca gets to pick
Specifically,
Bianca.
the purple tribe gets
Yes.
to pick.
Yes. So Bianca goes for purple. Um, I believe Camilla goes for orange, and then Justin goes for green. Uh, what do you think about these people going on the journey? Do you think? I mean, a lot of it has to do with how the journey ended up, but We really haven't seen much of Bianca. We didn't really see much of Justin. You know, Camilla we saw a little bit of, but not really that much.
Yeah, well, obviously with Justin, it is a game changing decision. I don't know why they decided to send him and not somebody else, but it turns out to be an extremely consequential choice. And with Bianca, I think it's really interesting because she and her closest ally Thomas have now both had opportunities to get advantages, and both of them have approached it in very different ways. And you know, should we wait to talk about that until we've talked about the?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, so Bianca does not get the advantage from the journey. She comes back to camp empty-handed, having lost a vote. And she tells the whole tribe that she had the choice on whether to risk her vote, and it was a challenge that she didn't feel confident about, so she decided not to risk it. She then pulls Thomas aside and says, "Hey, listen, I'm telling you because I trust you. I actually did lose my vote." And she tells him the truth about what the journey was, that the entire story that she had told about the challenge at play was totally false. And Thomas comes and turns around and says to the camera, "I love that she told me that. However, I am not going to tell her that I did get an advantage. I'm still holding out close to the chest."
Yeah.
So you have this dynamic that on the surface is kind of these two inseparable schemers who are playing the game together, but really one of them seems to be trusting the other one far more than the reverse.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very interesting. Yeah, I think that Thomas is just a very interesting character. And another thing that speaks to sort of the dynamic of the Purple Tribe, because on the surface, here he's near the top of the tribe, just behind Shaheen. You know, he's in this California Girls Alliance, but also has, a good ally in Bianca who is telling him, that she lost his vote or whatever. But also, like, Shaheen has said to the camera that Thomas scares him, and like Thomas is the person on the tribe that threatens him the most. And if Star does get this advantage, and Joe is like, "I am never voting on Eva," and Eva's like, "I'm never voting on Joe," then Bianca or Thomas is the next easy target or the next likely target. And right now, Bianca doesn't have a vote, but only Thomas knows that. And if Thomas is the bigger threat and Purple just keeps winning, then I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being an earlier threat. Obviously, we have a swap now, but if he ends up being a threat before basically anybody else on Purple is, but we'll just have to see.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting thing to think about because let's say Star does get this advantage open. Well, that gives her an idol, right? Is the presumption there? And that would be something to use to say have a majority from only a 3-person or perhaps even a 2-person alliance, which could be herself, Thomas, and Bianca. And even if they only have 2 votes between the 3 of them, there could be a way to play that idol, which perhaps I would trust Thomas to make the decision on how to do that, on the condition that, okay, now you have an ally in me, Star. So yeah, it could be very interesting there. It's also fun because Star clearly wants Eva out, and if she has this idol and feels she has some leverage with it, then I could see Thomas saying, "Okay, well, screw Joe, let's get Eva out."
Yeah, that's totally interesting. This is why to me, like, even with Green continuing to lose, like, Purple is the most interesting tribe in my opinion, because unlike Orange, where there's like, maybe the smallest amount of potential strategy, but there's really nothing there. Purple feels like there is a lot going on. Like, even though there's not anything that's really like happening because they keep winning. Like if they did lose, and if they did lose before this swap, like it would have been a very interesting dynamic, even just that first vote.
Well, there's enough interpersonal discord on their tribe that they're being forced to think about if and when we do go to tribal, what is going to happen.
Yeah.
How am I going to make sure that the people that I like stay in and the people that I don't like get voted out? Because for everybody, almost everybody, if not everybody on the tribe, they have their favorites. And these alliances are forming on kind of sectarian lines because of it.
Sectarian lines. I honestly don't know what that means. No?
Well, in any case.
Okay. But okay, anyways. I wanted to get back to the journey because I have a lot to say on this journey, mostly negative things about this particular journey. Bianca, Camilla, and Justin get sent to this journey where they just, they're like, okay, the survivor's given up. You play a dice rolling game. I don't know. You don't get to choose. You have to do it.
Well, and just to emphasize the point, none of them, with the exception of Bianca, is choosing to go on this journey.
Exactly. Yeah.
They are being sent there by virtue of their tribes not coming in first in the challenge.
Yeah.
It's
stupid.
They're chosen for oblique reasons that we do not see, that perhaps they themselves do not even know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, could it be for Justin the reason he gets sent? Just as simple as, well, other people on your tribe have gone on a journey and I don't know, you have pizza on your shirt and that's funny, so we're sending you. Who knows? It could be something as simple as that, or Camilla is short and doesn't quote unquote seem that threatening. We'll send her. Blah blah blah.
It's totally arbitrary, and it doesn't even really. The reasoning doesn't ever really come up. Which is, I think, what makes this aspect of it less interesting from a viewership standpoint than something like, who are you going to bring along on this reward that you just won? Which often has these profound social impacts and strategic impacts on the game. But usually there is some kind of stated or implied reasoning there. Here, there's nothing. These people don't even know each other, know?
Yeah, and so, it just makes it makes the whole thing arbitrary. Everything about this part of the episode is so arbitrary. It's arbitrary who goes on the journey. It's arbitrary. It feels like whether you get an advantage or lose your vote. And it's arbitrary. You don't get to decide whether you actually want to do it or not. You're being forced to. You're being forced to go to Jess Island of silly little games that determine your fate in the game. So.
Right. I think it would be fair to say, listen, do you want to take a 50-50 shot and gain a vote or lose a vote? Are those odds that you're comfortable with?
Yeah, I think
play the game, It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but I think it works.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, because if you just had that choice, the option to play or not, then the whole concept of just taking the 50-50 of literally rolling dice to determine whether you get an advantage or not would go down a lot easier for me personally, just knowing that it wasn't being forced upon a player. Because there have been plenty of times in the past where people go on journeys and you can risk your vote to potentially get an extra vote, but you have the choice on whether you want to do that or not. I remember in Survivor Ghost Island, when the whole contest was risking your vote at Ghost Island, and most of the time people would risk their vote. But one time, Kellen didn't risk her vote and was like, this is too much. We're at final 8 or whatever. I don't want to risk my vote. And so she didn't, and she didn't have to. And it just, it's more interesting to me because if I was in the situation that Justin was in, I would not risk my vote ever. If I was in the situation that Camilla was in, I probably would,
And he says in his confessional that they show as they're on their way to the journey, he says something to the effect of, my tribe is in a precarious enough position that I really would not like to take any risks that I don't have to,
Yeah.
He's squarely in the middle of his tribe. He doesn't want to do anything to lessen his own standing. And obviously losing his vote would and did do that. Yeah. And I absolutely agree. I think as our third brother pointed out as we were watching the episode, the very word risk as a verb implies a choice, you know?
Yeah.
It implies, well, there is a safe option and there is an unsafe option, and I'm choosing the unsafe option for XY reasons that may or may not make sense based on that person's position in the game. Justin is a smart enough player to know it would not be worth that 50-50 shot for me to risk my vote right now. You know, we have somebody who's on the bottom of this tribe. That person, unless something crazy happens, should likely, probably, way more than 50% chance be going home.
Mhm.
Why would I risk my own vote and jeopardize that when the person going home instead could be me?
Yeah, exactly. And to me, like, going into this episode, like, I feel as if Justin is in the best spot on his tribe because Say and Mary are obviously not on the best. Like, they're not in the best spot because they're actively going against each other and actively working against each other. And I would say Cedric isn't either because when Say is having her her meltdown, shall we say, probably a strong word, but when she's going on about how her idol play wasn't ideal, she isn't pointing the blame at Justin. She's pointing the blame at Cedric. So to me, it's like up until this journey, Cedric is in easily the best spot on his tribe. A tribe of only four, but I feel like he is the most secure out of those
Justin
people. Unless
is secure on the track.
yes, that's how I felt. My apologies. But yes, but Justin loses his vote, and then Bianca loses her vote, and then Camilla gets an extra vote. And here's the thing about this to me: it's like not only does it suck that Bianca and Justin lose their votes completely arbitrarily, but to me, it's like I can't even reward the fact that Camilla got an extra vote, who's somebody I'm actively rooting for to do well in the game, because it felt like she just got an advantage completely arbitrarily and didn't quote unquote earn it at the journey. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, if the whole thing with the new era is that nothing is earned on Survivor, we're not giving you rice, we're not giving you flint if you lose your challenges, then this is totally contrary to that because it is purely by chance. And I mean, for anybody who may not remember, who didn't watch the episode, I don't know why you're listening to this, but they literally had to roll dice, and it was implied that there was a 50-50 shot, although the pedantic side of me is like they never explicitly said it was a 50-50 shot, failing the dice roll or succeeding in the dice roll.
Yeah.
And that's essentially, I mean, there was a little bit more to it than that, but not much. That was basically it.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, two people lost their vote, one person gained it. None of them did anything to deserve that other than to be singled out by the purple tribe for one reason or another as the person that they want to go on that journey, not knowing what comes next, what they're going to have to do, or whether they'll be able to choose to do anything there. There was no choice involved at any point for them in the process. The only point of agency that Justin or Camilla had in any of this was whether or not their tribe came in first at the challenge.
Yeah. And even still, since it was a blindfolded challenge, I mean, Camilla, I guess, being the one who was calling the shots, had quote unquote more agency, but like Justin didn't have any. He was the one who was being directed. If anything, it's Cedric's fault, if anybody's, that, Justin lost his vote. And certainly, well, Cedric, as we'll get to way later, is definitely the reason Justin went home. But that's besides the point. I did want to get back to the way that these three people describe their journeys to the people back at camp, which I think is usually the most interesting part about these journeys, in my opinion. We already talked about Bianca, and I agree that I think that Bianca played it about as well as she could have, because like there's no reason to be open on a tribe that's this like there's this much tension bubbling under the surface. Like
No. To
I
the
think
winner tribe, I agree. And she came up with a good lie. I mean, it was a plausible lie.
it got Thomas. It got Thomas. So
Yeah.
yeah, is pretty good. And I also think Camilla. This one you might disagree with, but I feel like Camilla telling her tribe the truth and saying that she did get an extra vote actually was a good idea and was the best thing she could do, because I think about it like this. everybody is against Charity right now for playing the game too early and playing the game too hard. If people get word that Camilla is being duplicitous and she tells just like Kyle the fact that she got an advantage and that spreads around, I think that would put a big target on her back just because, like, oh, wow, you're playing the game early. Like, we haven't even gotten to tribal yet and you're lying to us, blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, Camilla, like, kind of, because she doesn't know there's a swap coming up. So her being like, yes, let's all bring it in, kumbaya, we're doing this for us, I think doesn't put a target on her back, especially when Mitch also has an extra vote. And I think in the future, she's not going to be targeted as somebody having an advantage for just having an extra vote when people are going to have idols in play and stuff like that, which will be way more quote unquote threatening. So I think it was a smart move, but I don't know.
Now, implicit in all of this is this idea that if you tell people that you have an advantage, that you must be telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, there are cases where, you think you're about to get voted out, so you try to bluff having an idol. That's not what's happening here.
Yeah.
This is, I get back from a journey. It's expected that I tell everyone what happened. And if I tell them that I won an advantage, then therefore I'm telling the truth. Do you think, Joey, that there's any scenario where it would be advantageous to come back from a journey not having won, say, an extra vote or even having lost a vote, and to claim that you did win? Do you think there's a scenario where that would be good strategy?
I think there used to be, like maybe in the 30s and maybe even the early new era. I just think nowadays people know the game too well now. Like, because if you come back and you say, I have an extra vote now, all somebody has to say is, can I see it? And the lie is over. You know what I mean? Because if you do have an extra vote, you'll basically just have an extra slip of paper. You might even have like rules saying what the extra vote is and how to use it. Um, which you can't do that with a lie. You can't recreate that when you're lying about it. So I don't know. I think maybe theoretically, if that direct evidence wasn't there that everybody knew was out there, then yes, you could probably do something like Tony did in Cagayan and bluff that you have this great advantage that you don't actually have to make people too scared to go after you. But I
But
mean,
in the case of someone like Camilla on this very intact kumbaya kind of tribe, right? Now, that said, I wonder if her tribe is getting along so well that nobody would even think to ask her about showing the scroll,
yeah, maybe. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I might be wrong. I'd have to rewatch it, but I'm pretty sure when Mitch got his extra vote, they showed in the footage him like showing off the paper and being like, "I got this." So if Camilla didn't do that, I think that would also maybe raise some eyebrows, which, is kind of annoying and kind of speaks to the imperfect nature of advantages and the evidence of advantages in Survivor, and how it's a lot harder to bluff an idol than it used to be.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think there's much to do about that, honestly.
Which, in fairness to the producers, I do like that now the immunity idols look forgeable.
I do too.
I
Yeah.
think I don't think that that has to be the case for every season or for every idol, but I like that there is some of that going on. Anyway, this is just an aside to kind of interrogate that assumption that if Camilla tells the tribe that she has gained a vote, that it must be the truth. And I think you've made a strong argument that yes, that Occam's razor, like yes, she would be telling the truth. Yes, this would probably only ingratiate her further to her tribe members. So yeah, I mean, I definitely see the argument, and I perhaps even agree that it was the right move for her to do that. We'll see how it shakes out, of course. But an extra vote is a powerful thing.
Yeah, for sure. To me, the most interesting lie was by far Justin's, though. I thought Justin's lie was really interesting, and I'd be very curious to get your thoughts on it, where Justin basically foregoes the entire route of getting a vote or losing a vote or blah, 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 and says, I'm got something for the tribe. I had to roll for question marks, red or white question marks, and we'll see if I got something tomorrow. A really interesting lie. What did you think about it?
Fascinating lie. I kind of didn't I didn't quite grasp just how crazy of a lie that was
Yeah.
until my second time watching this episode when I said that does not sound like something that Survivor would do.
Yeah. It doesn't.
It to me, it was not only a bald-faced lie, but it was a poorly constructed one. And he even kind of admits in the episode, I don't even really know what I said to them. I didn't tell them that I lost my vote, and I also didn't claim to get an extra vote or anything like that. I just left the vote question alone. And and yeah, I mean, I rolled dice for a game advantage for the tribe that'll come tomorrow after we vote somebody out. I mean, I guess it buys you
Very
some
odd.
time. It
Yeah.
buys you
I
some time,
mean,
but
yeah, I think that's the whole idea of the lie is buying just in time, probably just to be like, hey, I mean, I did this, and like, well, we'll see, like, we'll see tomorrow. So like, make sure I'm there, tomorrow, so like we can see, blah blah blah. But I mean, it's one of those things that is extremely, it's really very easy to prove didn't happen,
yes.
especially the next day. Like if you get nothing, you can either be like, well, either Justin lost or dot dot dot, it was just a lie and you actually did earn something. Because
Right.
if Justin says afterwards, actually, I did lose my vote, I just didn't want to tell anybody, I think people would look at him side eyed, like, well, why'd you come up with that entire lie then?
Yeah.
And we're too afraid to tell your closest allies about it. But yeah,
Now, what do you think about Justin's decision not to tell his allies about it?
I don't think it's a big deal. I think he did the right thing in not saying that he lost his vote because, I mean, fast forwarding a little bit, in 5 out of 6 worlds, it shouldn't have mattered the fact that he lost his vote because Mary eventually essentially gets voted out 2-0. And in the world where Justin, where that happens, Justin's vote would have been concealed. Like they wouldn't have shown that third vote, regardless of whether it was there or not. So frankly, I don't think it matters. I think Justin's lie sold it, and like he didn't need to tell anybody about the fact he lost his vote. And I think if he did tell Cedric that he lost his vote, that would only put more heat on himself. That wouldn't lower the heat on Justin. That would only simmer up the pizza boy, as it were. But yeah, uh,
Good
that was
old
just my thought,
simmered
though.
pizza.
Hmm.
Uh, I totally agree, Joey. I think this was an actual calculated risk and calculated to the point where there are actual probabilities involved,
Hmm.
where, yes, even if Mary plays her shot in the dark, which is not a guarantee because who knows, but Occam's razor, let's say that the most likely outcome is that most of the votes go on Mary and she plays her shot in the dark, then you're right. 5 out of 6 times, it doesn't matter that he withheld that. And you raise a great point that only 2 votes would even have been read under those circumstances. And, I guess the one tell would be that in this case, Jeff said 1 vote left when there was,
Yeah,
you know, after only 1 vote had been read because there were only 2 total votes. So I guess maybe Say or Cedric could have picked it up that way, but
but
uh,
also he wouldn't say 1 vote left if Mary hadn't been safe. You know what I mean? I think if it had just been unanimous, it would have been 1 vote Mary, and then second or the third person voted out of Survivor 48 Mary. But because she was immune, only then did it say 1 vote. Did he say 1 vote left? Um, and they're probably too caught up in the chaos of it all to even realize. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah.
it's interesting. Um, okay, well, I mean, I feel us getting
Yeah, we're
towards the
jumping ahead a
technical,
little,
so
but yeah, I mean, it's just after Green loses again, it's a very this is the type of episode that I really think is interesting in terms of strategizing. When you have one person so clearly on the bottom and they have nothing, and the entire basis is them staying in the game. In this case, Mary is purely off the paranoia of others. This has happened a few times throughout Survivor history. I think about Malcolm in Caramoan being followed around by Andrea. That's something I remember. It happens. I don't know. It happens a good amount of times. It happened with Russell and Samoa. I remember when he famously ran around the jungle looking for an idol, and he actually found it. Sort of the inverse of Mary in this case. In Survivor Blood versus Water, Tina was on the bottom, and so Tyson and Jervis just followed her around the whole time. This is kind of like that, but I do like Mary's approach to it, even though theoretically it shouldn't have worked. Where she just kind of said, you know what, I'm just not going to do anything, and went out for a swim. Because there's like a certain guarantee in the fact that Say is going to read into every little thing you do. And so I think it was smart.
It was. And this was Mary's version of bluffing an idol. This was the idol bluff without an actual physical piece of hardware. And it was a bit of a Hail Mary, pardon the, not even getting into the actual Hail Mary that was played at Tribal. But it was an interesting strategy. And I think she accurately calculated that I am very likely not going to gain anything by blindly searching the woods for this last minute idol. You made a great point earlier, which I never quite realized, about how the second advantage that's hidden is no longer a beware advantage, but just a plain idol most of the time.
Yeah.
Which is a piece of meta that I don't think I had quite internalized. And I wonder if the players realize that as well. Because I was thinking, oh, well, even if Mary found something, she would have to go through a whole rigmarole to even access the idol, and then maybe she'd lose her vote, and then she wouldn't be able to play her shot in the dark. And I was thinking about that. So, I mean, maybe there is another reality where she could have just straight up found the idol, but no, I think that this was a good play, and she did it exactly how she could have in order to get exactly the reaction that she was seeking from Say. It was really, really funny to hear her describe her own strategy as remaining cool as a cucumber, and then Say going and being like, why is she acting cool as a cucumber?
It's the type of thing that like would make you understand why people who have never seen Survivor are like, this is clearly scripted, right? There's no way this is a real show. But no, that was a really, really funny moment for sure. I think the way that Mary played this was pretty smart. Obviously, once again, shouldn't have theoretically worked, but I think it was the best play that she had. It reminded me a lot of Rachel from last season, sort of doing the same thing when she had an idol, and everyone was like, well, Rachel's on the bottom. We'll just, get rid of her next. And Rachel, sort of like Mary this episode, basically said, yeah, I'm going to the jury, or I'm getting voted out. So, but I've made my peace with
when
it.
it's your time, it's just your time.
Exactly. Yeah. And so this reminded me of that a good deal. And I thought it was an interesting play. Say just feels pretty uneasy about it, and she goes to Cedric, and this is what I think is interesting. She goes to Cedric and it says, we should really split the vote on Mary, just in case. But like, there's only 4 people. And so that put a bit of heat on Justin, because like if they actually went through with it, then Justin theoretically would have gone home if Mary had an idol. But I don't know.
If you're Justin in that situation, do you fold and just say like, listen, guys, or at least to Cedric, listen, I don't have a vote tonight. And if you guys are going to split votes, then you're going to have to do it in a strategic way that prevents Mary from getting her way, essentially.
Yeah. I guess you would have to. I don't think Justin ever got the word that was something that Say threw out. But I think if Justin did get the word, then there are 2 camps, because either you do say it then that you lost your vote, and then you're just kind of like, please don't split the vote, please, let's just keep it on Mary, or you say nothing and just hope that they don't do it and hope it doesn't backfire on you. Honestly, if I were in that situation, I would like to think that the better option would be to just say nothing, sort of like Justin has been doing. Because, I mean, realistically, you're on a tribe of four. Just splitting the vote is just kind of insane,
It
in
is
my
weird.
opinion.
It
Because
is.
all it takes is Mary voting for, the right person on this vote split, and then your plans are ruined, and the vote split doesn't work anymore.
Yeah,
You know?
but then it's deadlocked and Mary can't vote again.
Yeah,
And theoretically, if everybody has their votes, then it'll still go your way.
yeah, fair enough. Yeah, you're right.
Um, yeah, well, and I guess I don't remember for sure. I think Cedric does tell Justin, "Hey, listen, like, uh, Say has mentioned writing your name in a vote split scenario,"
Mhm.
and I think then that's when Cedric and maybe to a lesser extent Justin start going to bat and telling Say, like, "Listen, I really don't think Mary has an idol. I think
Yeah,
she's."
you're right. Yeah, no, you're right. I just I forgot that.
Yeah.
There is something that we weren't shown in the episode, which is a little insane, which I wanted to get your thoughts on. Apparently, I don't know if you've read about this, but apparently there was one scene that didn't make the cut where Say was talking to Mary, and Mary had like a little leaf scroll that she was bluffing as her piece of paper, and she put it in her pocket. And Say reached into Mary's pocket to see if it was real or not. And that didn't make the episode. Probably because it definitely toes the line of what is and isn't allowed on Survivor. But like to me, it just speaks to Say's level of paranoia being so crazy, and her lack of sort of I don't know, a filter on herself, shall we say, that everybody else has. Um, but yeah, I thought that was a really weird, interesting thing that you really that just doesn't happen on Survivor. That like isn't even in the thought of most people. So
That is fascinating. I mean, yeah, and it's true. I mean, Say just has this uh on one hand this deep paranoia, but also in many ways way more agency than anybody else on this
yeah,
tribe.
for
You know,
sure.
she is a little bit unhinged as a player, I would say, but
Hmm.
she's calling the shots anyway. And it almost reminds me of like a Colton kind of situation. I mean, she's
Yeah,
obviously not she's definitely not on that level, but the
it's a good
fact
call.
or even maybe like Sugar from Gabon,
Yeah,
like she is the one person who the entire tribe's arc is basically subject to her own whims. You can trace a lot of this episode's events to the fact that she played an idol last episode, and found that she didn't need to do that. And she comes away getting her way.
yeah. No, you're right. That's a good point. Well, let's go to tribal council because this is really the meat and potatoes of the episode. We get to tribal council way earlier than we do normally in the episodes, and I don't normally like looking at the time, but I couldn't help but notice, and I was like, okay, something's about to go down.
Oh, I love it. I love it when there's 25 minutes left in the episode and we're going to tribal. Something juicy is about to happen. Now, it does, the fact there's something juicy is maybe even itself a spoiler. So
Mhm.
that's it is what it is. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's talk about it.
It's interesting because the second most interesting thing about this tribal council is basically the end of the first voting, which is there are two votes on Mary, and Mary plays her shot in the dark, and it just so happens to work. And that is the crazy thing. People go crazy. I know I went crazy. I believe you went crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Is wild moment.
Well,
Um,
let me just say, as a viewer,
yeah,
Mary is the saving grace of this tribe.
yeah,
Say
for
is
sure.
fun to watch because she speaks her mind and she has all this agency and she is a little bit crazy, but she's not somebody who I'm rooting for, personally speaking.
Yeah,
Mary is also a little bit crazy, but I think much more relatable and likable.
for sure. Yeah.
And she's the underdog. So yeah, she successfully plays a shot in the dark. Wahoo! It's
Mhm.
similar to when Caleb successfully played his shot in the dark. Caleb was such a rootable figure who happened to be on the bottom, um, and lo and behold, he lives to see another day.
Yeah, I find these sort of situations with the shot in the darks are really fascinating to me. It's not even just the shot in the dark. This person has immunity. Now we have to get rid of somebody else. I think about the do or die in Survivor 41 and 42. When Deshaun was safe when doing this like game with the fire and the skulls, and then 42 when Lindsay did the same thing. And then you have Caleb's shot in the dark, and now you have Mary's shot in the dark. And every time these are successful and they're, exciting, and, it's like, yes, this person's safe. But then there's always the caveat of like, okay, well, somebody else still has to go home. And whoever does go home it's going to feel a little icky. So in the case of 41, I believe it was Danny who went home. 42, I honestly can't remember. I couldn't tell you. 45, it was Jay Maya, and that was the last pre-jury vote. And then here, obviously, we will get to it being Justin. But this one is especially fascinating because of the fact that there were no other votes whatsoever for anybody else. And they basically had to start all over. It was really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was an unprecedented event in tribal council history. And it really got on Twitter. I was seeing the Survivor rules lawyers coming out of the woodwork talking about why this is or is not how it should have gone down from a procedural standpoint, which, it's fun when you're doing legal analysis on the Survivor rule book.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was interesting. I saw a little bit of that. I saw Dwight from Survivor 43 arguing in a long thread about the idea that Justin shouldn't have agency, and it should have been, I believe he said that it should have been Say instead who had the final say and who went home. But we'll get to all of that. So the votes are deadlocked. There's no votes. It's a revote. And at this point, Jeff doesn't reveal the fact that Justin doesn't have a vote. So,
but it should have been obvious. Like, let's just point that out to anybody who was paying attention, that there were only 2 votes. That 2 votes were red. They were both for Mary. And the only person who would have not had a vote would be Justin. Mm-hmm. I guess, unless somebody else had found a beware advantage that no one was aware of. But to your point, maybe there's only one beware advantage per tribe per season. Say had already found and gotten through and used it. So a smart player should have been able to deduce that Justin did not vote.
Yeah. And I will give Say credit for this. On the revote, Say correctly votes Justin, which is exactly what she should have done, was the correct decision. She did the votes correctly both times. She voted Mary correctly, and then she voted Justin correctly.
Yes.
Cedric is the one that's a little more of a question mark, because Cedric votes Mary, which is the correct option, and then he votes Say, which is very odd to me, which deadlocks the vote yet again. And I remember him doing that, and I was thinking, and Cedric's number 1 is Justin, so I guess Cedric is flipping on Say now because he sees her as less loyal, but that's really not what happened. I still don't really get why Cedric voted for Say here.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I do think that on the beach, Cedric and Justin were very, very tight. Mm-hmm. And I was listening to Justin's post-game interview with Rob Cesternino. He was saying that they had a day one alliance that seemed very, very deep-rooted, that Cedric basically said to him, I will never write your name down. I will never turn against you. I want to play this game with you, which, by the way, kind of a crazy thing to say on day one and presumably mean it, given that but I think that's where he was coming to this from. Now, what I don't understand is what he thought would happen. Because he knew that Say would have to vote for Justin, that there was simply no other way.
Yeah.
He would have had to know that. And so Jeff reads the votes and they're deadlocked. 1 vote for Justin, 1 vote for Say. And then they re-vote.
Mm-hmm. I will say my assumption when Cedric voted 1-1 is I thought that they would just immediately go to rocks. And since Mary was safe and Justin had and the votes were deadlocked between Say and Justin, I just assumed that in a Cirie Game Changers moment that Cedric would go home automatically, and Cedric essentially voted himself out. That's what I thought would happen.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I thought that was going to happen too, but no, that's and the way that Jeff explains it. If I'm having trouble exactly remembering what the reasoning was,
it's very confusing. Yeah,
but it was basically that the reason why normally when votes are deadlocked, that the two people who were voted for don't vote is because they would have to vote for each other. So therefore, it's just pointless for them to vote.
yeah,
But because Justin had lost his vote, and this is where Jeff reveals, if you didn't already understand, Justin did not have a vote tonight. Then there is a point because Justin can't cancel out Say's inevitable vote for him. So therefore, Say and Cedric do get to vote because that canceling out was never a hard and fast rule. Like,
yeah.
if people are tied, then that means that they're actually immune. It's actually that there's no point in them voting for each other.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, and it's something that honestly I didn't really understand up until you explained it right now. But yeah, I mean it makes sense. So yeah, the votes are deadlocked yet again, and here's another thing: they do the revote yet again, and once again, Say votes for Justin, and once again, Cedric votes for Say, and it's the type of thing where, to me, I guess I guess Cedric has to commit at that point to voting for Say, because I mean he already theoretically burned his bridge with Say by voting her at all. And so I guess he should probably continue voting for her, but
I would
as
probably stick to my guns too if I were Cedric.
yeah, but as we see later in the episode, he does not end up sticking to his guns, which makes it all the more confusing,
Right.
in my personal opinion. But yeah.
Yeah, and actually, if I were Cedric, I would have been worried that would I be essentially rocking myself out
Yeah.
by making this vote. Now, I'm sure that the players had the rules explained to them with more specificity than what we, the viewers, saw. So there was probably less uncertainty in the outcome of the votes going a certain way compared to what we were observing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I actually am, as I'm talking about all this, having my doubts. Like, why is it that normally when we go to rocks, that the people who the vote is deadlocked on are immune? Why is that the rule before but not now?
Yeah, it's I don't know. Part of me just wonders, like, did they come up with these rules on the spot because they had no idea how to approach them? Like, because I wouldn't be surprised if that is true. Because like, it's such a rare situation where there's a shot in the dark and a lost vote in a tribe of only four, and it just keeps deadlocking. Like, it's a weird situation,
It
and I
is.
can't imagine the Survivor rulebook is that specific to each individual circumstance. So yeah,
It is, but it's also there's a non-zero chance. I mean, production knew going in that uh,
fair.
that
Yeah.
Justin would not have a vote, that there were only a maximum of 3 votes that were going to be cast, and that always there's the possibility of one or more shot in the dark plays. You know, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would be curious to know from a production standpoint, do they think through all of these contingencies ahead of time? Uh, my suspicion is they don't, because if they keep adding new advantages and idols willy nilly, and each one, as we saw with the infamous Surreal elimination, adds to the confusion that is possible.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, and we get some confusing situation happen after the another deadlock in which Cedric becomes the sole vote, the sole person who can eliminate either Say or Justin, and
It's a
this
throwback to the pre fire making challenge at Final Four, where I get to unilaterally decide who I'm taking with me to the
yeah,
finals.
for sure. I mean, when you put it like that, it really makes it a lot. It's a very interesting bit already, but if you were to put those against all of those other, final three, I'm bringing you to the end sort of decisions, the fact that this is so impromptu and so like out of nowhere, I mean, it's so spirited. Like, obviously, we only get to see a small piece of it, but Say is pleading for her life, and Justin, I assume, was also pleading for his life, but we just didn't get to see as much of it because there's only a certain amount of time in the episode.
Joey, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall at that tribal council because in the post-game press, Justin has been saying that this was one of the longest tribal councils, maybe the longest in history, that it lasted upwards of 4 hours that they were sitting there. And yeah, I mean, multiple votes, that's got to take some time, of course. But I think there was a lot of discussion that we didn't see. And he made some oblique comments to the effect of, there were some heavy discussions that were had. I had to pick and choose when it was time for me to speak and when it was time for me to listen.
Mhm.
The mind wanders, thinking about what this could have been. The obvious, at least maybe in my mind, kind of speculation would be that there ended up being some kind of discussion about race that we didn't see.
For sure.
The fact that Cedric and Say are both Black, and that Black people on Survivor have historically been voted out early.
Mhm.
And that, there was obviously that famous moment in, was it 42, where
42.
Marianne and Drea both played their advantages together, specifically because they did not want yet another Black person to be voted out for like the 4th time in a row. And they said, this is why we're doing it, and it's beyond the game. And it was a pretty powerful moment. Now, a lot of people were upset by it, but I wonder if something like that could have happened here too. And we weren't shown it because, well, I think that Survivor is trying to get past its woke era, but also because there was just too much else going on in this episode.
Yeah. I mean, I would have liked to at least seen Justin's argument. Like, I would have liked for him to say, because I'm sure he would say the same things that I would say in this situation, which is, you already burnt the bridge with Say. I'm a loyal ally to you. I would not vote against you. And we've been working since the beginning. But like,
which
we
is
didn't get to see that.
I mean, for anybody who knows Say, who has seen the way that she goes about this game, maybe they haven't seen this side of her. Maybe it's just a side that we, the audience, get to see. But she's not going to trust Cedric again.
No.
The fact that he wrote her name down twice. I mean, she wanted to stop trusting him after he tipped her off that she was going to have votes going her way, and encouraged her to play her idol. I mean, it kind of boggles the mind, but instead, Cedric, all that we see of his reasoning is, well, I'll keep Say as long as you two cut it out.
I don't.
Being her and Mary and their little beef.
Yeah, I mean, it's just wild to me because they are not assuming a tribe swap. There's no reason to really assume a tribe swap. Tribe swaps aren't that common in the new era, and the fact that Cedric, all that we see is Cedric's, sort of reasoning is, you two need to work together. When it's only a tribe of 3 that's left is just crazy to me.
Right.
I just don't get it. And for that reasoning, why the edit showed us that, unless there's going to be more with Mary and Say in the future, and they're going to continue this dynamic, which may be possible. I don't know what the swap numbers are. You do, but yeah.
Well, and before we get to that, I mean, I think the kind of elephant in the room here is that at the end of the day, Cedric is just not that good of a player.
No, not at all.
I mean, I think we can safely say that at this point, that he is much more concerned with the interpersonal dynamics at play than legitimately doing what he needs to do to get further in the game. Yeah. Because if he really was playing with his own self-interest in mind, it would have been the obvious choice to keep Justin, who has shown nothing but loyalty to him, who he has this day one alliance with, and send home the person who is clearly much more volatile, who is going to trust him less.
Yeah.
And
Here's the thing. I'm of the opinion that like this may sound kind of crazy, but of the 4 people on this Green Tribe, I think Justin played the best this episode. I think everybody else played worse than him. I think certainly Cedric played worse than him in the choices that he made and the decision he made. I think Mary definitely played worse than him because she got voted out and was only able to survive based on a twist that hasn't existed for 75% of Survivor history. A literal dice roll as well. And then Say, because I don't know, Say's paranoia was the reason that she got sussed upon in every world except for the 2% chance or something that Justin had to lose the dice roll and lose his vote, and then have the shot in the dark go off and have the rules play out like they
Sent
did.
on the journey in the first place.
Exactly. Like the odds are so low, and he got so screwed over that really his lie worked. I mean, in all worlds, it should have bought him at least another day. After that, sure, there would have been question marks. But the fact that he didn't share the fact that he lost his vote was not the reason that he went home in this situation. It was the fact that he was forced to lose it at all because the votes should have been, you know, uh, um, camouflaged. Like they shouldn't have been able to figure out that Justin lost his vote because the votes were unanimous on Mary. So he got through that perfectly fine. And then at the decision that Cedric made, logically, Justin should have been the better person to keep and Say should have gone home, but it was because of Cedric's own incompetence in the sense that Say is probably still in the game, though we obviously don't know the full arguments.
Right.
But to me, Justin played the best, and that's why it makes me feel especially unhappy that he went home this episode. You know what I mean?
Now, I will say that I disagree with you here. That
Okay.
I do not think that Justin played the best of his tribe given his circumstances. I think that would be Mary. Now, Mary was in a really awful position coming into this episode, and for reasons that are perhaps beyond the scope of this discussion, many of which were likely her own fault. But
Mhm.
based on everybody's relative position within the tribe, um, at the beginning of this episode, I think Mary played as well as she could have because she made a good effort to find the idol, didn't work. Made a good effort to bluff about having found the idol, didn't work. But those were desperate moves, and then obviously played the shot in the dark, which turned out to be the right move. So I think, given all that, Mary played the best. Justin was absolutely screwed over by the journey twist.
Mhm.
No doubt about it. He should not have gone home this episode, but I do think that he made mistakes.
Yeah.
I think that the lie that he told when he got back from the journey was a bad lie, you know? And I agree that it probably shouldn't have mattered that he didn't tell Cedric that he had lost his vote, but I do think that he could have at least come up with a better lie
Yeah.
coming back. Now, I've softened on this a little bit because at first I thought, well, he really should have told Cedric, but no, it was a calculated risk, and he had a 5 out of 6 chance of the risk paying off and going his way, and it turns out that the 1 out of 6 won out, and that's fine. That's what happens. But so yes, at the end of the day, I completely agree with you that that he was screwed over because of getting sent on this journey because of the dice roll. All of that is true. I wouldn't quite go as far as to say that he played the best of everyone on the tribe, but maybe that's splitting hairs.
I'll say this: the fact that it's an argument that we can have is indicative of
The
how.
fact that he unambiguously played much better than Cedric and Say, who are at the top of this tribe unequivocally now,
Mhm.
who are running things, and in many ways the order of which the pecking order of the tribe is kind of the opposite of the order of how well the different players played this episode. That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
wild. And that is, I think, the result of poor game design
Mhm.
by the producers this
I
episode.
agree. Yeah, I mean, I think here's the thing: if Justin hadn't gone home and it had been Say instead, I would probably think that this is a great episode. But because of the fact that it didn't, and Justin was in such a good spot and should have been in such a great spot, and in really no world that was like pre-New Era should have gone home just puts a big like sour note on this episode. Like I just can't like enjoy it. Like I can't separate the end result from everything that happened before it because like to me it's just like Justin got screwed over and it was bad design. Like it reminds me of some of the to me the all-time worst like production twists in history. I think about the hourglass twist and people being sent home when they thought that they were immune, Sydney and Lydia in 41 and 42. I think about Survivor Fiji, the original split tribal council, where Michelle Yee got screwed over and voted out because she went to a tribal council with people who were in the minority, the Four Horsemen Alliance. I think about I think Jenny, her name was, in Survivor Cook Islands, who got voted out because of a random twist where there are two tribal councils back to back after voting somebody else out. Like this goes in that unfortunate pantheon. You know what I mean? Because it does just speak to the game design. Justin shouldn't have gone home based on his own decisions. Even the fact that he didn't tell people about his lost vote and stuff like that. It's at the end of the day, it's splitting hairs, and I'm not necessarily sure it would have mattered because he should have been safe regardless. You know what I mean?
I totally agree. I think they did him dirty. I don't know what the game would have had in store for him if he had stuck around. I mean, selfishly, because I do really like Mary as a character, I am happy that her shot in the dark worked.
Sure.
There's a larger discussion to be had about is the shot in the dark a good advantage from a viewership perspective? Does it make the game more interesting? It makes the votes more complicated for sure, but I don't know if it makes the votes more interesting. And it's actually something that I'm pretty undecided on. But I think it is undeniable that Justin got screwed and someone else probably should have gone home this episode, even if it was Mary.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I was kind of curious when you were saying, like, I don't know how other people interpreted this. So I went to the place with the greatest opinions on the internet. I went to IMDb to see what they said about these episodes. And it's interesting because this last episode is the lowest rated of the 3 episodes that have happened so far for Survivor 48. So episode 1 was a 7.7. Episode 2 was a 7.8. Not that much of a drop off, but this past episode was 7.4, which is honestly very different. I would have to look, but I'm curious to see where Caleb's episode of 45 ranks because I would have to imagine that's way higher. That's an 8.9 out of 10 on IMDb. So,
well, yeah. I think that was a very different circumstance because, for one, Caleb was on, what was that, like a mergatory vote?
Yes, it was mergatory, yeah.
And everybody voted for Caleb. Mm-hmm. Everybody voted for Caleb. It was unanimous, right? If I recall.
Maybe I believe there was one vote or maybe 2 on J Maya, but yeah.
1 or 2 people voted with Caleb.
Yeah.
But there were, they had every opportunity to have a plan B, to, I don't know.
True. No, you're right.
Think about the fact that Caleb could play this shot in the dark thing that's never really worked before, but tonight could be the night. And everybody kind of just said, no, we all want him out. Therefore, he should get voted out. And that is kind of I think that's the ideal of the shot in the dark is that
I agree. Yeah.
Unanimity is not enough. That there is a Hail Mary where you can give away your vote in order for a 1 out of 6 shot. Sure, it's an interesting thing. This was not that. There were 2 total votes that were cast. And even if there were 3, even if Justin had not lost his vote, it's just a very different circumstance. And having a shot in the dark nullify all of the votes, it's honestly in many ways more compelling now. From a gameplay perspective, because it was arguably the optimal strategy to place all of the votes on Mary, and yet the shot in the dark still screwed it up. Whereas Caleb, it was kind of glorious. It was cathartic because Caleb is a likable player who, everybody wants to see succeed, who's watching at home. they see him screw over this majority, at least for one episode. So I think it's pretty different.
Yeah, no, you're right. I was just kind of curious to see what the difference in the rating was, to see if I could get a sense of how general audiences who used IMDb, I guess, thought about the episode. But yeah, I don't know. I do think from a casual viewing perspective, it's just not as cathartic, especially because it's not like the shot in the dark happened and then immediately somebody went home. In this episode, there's like probably 10 more minutes of just like debating on who should go home. And I think a lot of the oomph of Mary's shot in the dark, just from, a very casually viewing perspective, sort of went out the window. I certainly felt that way.
It was great when Jeff opens up the scroll and it says safe, but what comes after is just unfortunate. It's unfortunate for Justin because the way that it shakes out is okay. Like, who could have foreseen this, but also just suboptimal play. Mm-hmm. When Jay Maya gets sent home by the shot in the dark a few seasons ago, well, girl, that's just how the cookie crumbles, If, like, your alliance should have thought about this. Mm-hmm. Whereas in this case, it was just Cedric should have been less dumb,
Yeah, very much so. But anyways, that's that episode of Survivor. I'm really interested to see how the season shakes up. Now that there shouldn't be an obvious disaster tribe with the swap coming up, and you're telling me, Greg, that you have the numbers, you know who is on what tribe, and I'd be very interested to know those people.
I do. So let's. Do you want to go through the new tribes one by one?
Yeah. How about this? We'll go through the new tribes one by one, and we'll decide who we think is most on the outs on each tribe, and who would go home next episode if they go to tribal. Just completely guessing,
Okay. So the new orange tribe, we'll start with them.
All right.
From the purple tribe, Bianca. Only Bianca.
Okay.
From the green tribe, Say and Cedric.
Okay, fun.
And then from the current orange tribe, Chrissy and Mitch.
Interesting. Okay. So Bianca, Say, Cedric, Chrissy, and Mitch.
Yes.
So Say is going to be a force on that tribe because everybody else is definitely more of a passive player. Bianca we've seen the least of her out of anybody on purple. Cedric, and she doesn't have a vote. Cedric has been in the background. Chrissy, we've seen nothing of. And Mitch, we've seen a good amount of, but honestly,
but not strategically.
I think not strategically. He does have an extra vote though, so it's interesting.
Yeah, I have no idea what Chrissy and Mitch's relationship is. Do they go in strong? And if they do, they actually, unbeknownst to them, have the most votes of anybody. They have 3 votes to 2 total on the rest of the tribe. So they could dominate just mathematically, but will they?
Yeah. My thought is, in terms of people who are safe, I don't think Bianca's going home in any situation, regardless of whether she reveals she has a vote or not. I think people are just going to view her as background while, the real war will be between the 2 on orange and the 2 on green.
Well, and actually more so even than background, I think she could be a number for them.
Exactly. Like depending on whether she reveals she has a vote or not, she can quote unquote be a number to them. I think about this is a weird situation because this person did end up going home, but back to Survivor 45, there's a swap in that season too. And there's a similar one of 2-2-1 where on the blue tribe, the original blue tribe, there was Brando and Kendra. On the red tribe, there was Drew and Austin. And then the person who was on the out was Sean, who ended up quitting the game that episode. But he didn't have a vote either. He didn't have a vote, I believe. But he was not a target because he was not being seen as a threat, as a person that they need to get rid of. Instead, it was a battle between the 2 other tribes. At least I believe that's what the tribe orientation was. It was something like that. Either way, Sean was the only person on the yellow tribe and whatever he got swapped into. Right, yeah, it was different because Emily was the one on the tribe with Brando and Drew. Either way, Sean was on the outs and didn't have a vote, but he was still allowed to remain in the game and wasn't targeted because of the fact that he was an afterthought. Of course, he ended up quitting the game instead, but there you go.
Now, based on what I've seen, Bianca, excuse me, is a pretty socially adept player. I think that she will do a good job of ingratiating herself with these other tribes. I think Cedric is, good at interacting with other people too, maybe to a fault. I could see he's on the naive side. I could see Mitch being on the naive side too, as we've alluded to, although I could be wrong about that. I could actually see Say dominating this tribe again, just out of sheer willpower.
I do as well.
I will also note that this tribe does not seem particularly physically strong or good at challenges.
No, they do not. Once again, Cedric is arguably the strongest person on this tribe, much like with Green. So
I think Chrissy and Mitch are stronger than Cedric, but we'll see. We'll see.
The fact it's arguable, not a great sign. I would say if I had to call it now, and pick one person that is going home from this tribe next episode if they were to lose, I would say that it would be. I do think it would be Say. I think Cedric is a little too passive to go home, and as long as Chrissy and Mitch do continue to work together, which I don't see why they wouldn't, they have the extra vote and they have the numbers, and Bianca doesn't have a vote. So I think Say would be the easier target there, though I could see her dominating as well. It's hard to say.
I think it's going to be hot or cold for her. I completely see what you're saying happening, and I can also see, either she's going to be a loud voice on that beach, and that could either work for her or against her, depending on where the dice fall.
Yeah. What's the next one? Throw it at me.
So the new purple tribe, remaining on the purple tribe. This is a fun one. Star and Eva.
Oh, wow.
From the green tribe, Mary. And then from the orange tribe, Charity and David.
Charity and David. All right, well, I'll give my initial thoughts. I don't think there's any world where either Charity or David go home here.
No.
And I don't think there's any world where Mary goes home either. I think it's going to be as simple as Star versus Eva. And it's going to be who gets who on whose side. And it's interesting because Star does have that advantage. And if she brings it over, which I imagine she will, she'll have an advantage that she just has to figure out. The problem is she'll still be on the same beach. So she will be able to figure it out if she just continues going around. But Eva also knows about that and could warn everybody else that, hey, Star could have an advantage. We need to get rid of her. I do think the threat of an advantage will probably help Star out more than hurt her. So I would say if I had to pick one person from that new tribe to go home, I would say it would be Eva.
Yeah. I like that analysis. I think Charity and David, it doesn't really seem like they're quite working together currently on the orange tribe, but I think that they're both smart enough to say, okay, if we're swapping, better to stick together than deal with these unknowns.
They're also arguably the two strongest people on the tribe. Like you could make the case that Eva is stronger than maybe Charity or whatever, but I don't really think so.
Tribe, maybe with possibly the exception of Mary. I guess I can't tell. This is a pretty physically stacked tribe.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. So I really don't see them losing, honestly, but if they were to, I think Eva would be on the outs.
Yeah. Okay, and then finally, we have the new green tribe, which consists of, from purple, the entire California Girls Alliance.
Oh, wow.
So Shaheen, Joe, and Thomas all get swapped to that tribe. From orange, Kyle and Camilla.
Okay.
So, obviously, there is an existing alliance that will form the majority of this tribe going in. However, Kyle has an idol.
Yeah.
Camilla has an extra vote.
Interesting. Yeah. Now, this is it. everywhere Shaheen goes, there seems to be interesting stuff following him.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. If I had to call out people who I think are safe, I have too much faith in Shaheen to go home. I just think he's too good at Survivor. I think he'll find a way. I think Camilla will be more underestimated than Kyle, and I think she's less likely to be targeted than him.
Mhm.
So then it's just a matter of Thomas, Joe, or Kyle. I don't think Joe goes home because Joe seems to be trusted more by Shaheen, and he's also a little more obviously physical. Um, so that leaves Thomas or Kyle. And I think it's really just a matter of does Kyle play his idol or not if they were to go to tribal council. And I don't know. I would say we've gotten so much more of Thomas. I would think that Thomas sticks around. So I would say Kyle goes home and maybe gets blindsided with an idol in his pocket.
Yeah, I actually quite agree with that assessment. I think Kyle is striking me as a naive player. We didn't mention this, but there's a hilarious moment when David opens up about his living situation
Right.
living in this trailer outside his dad's house.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, dude, that's awesome. And David's like, no, it's not. My life sucks. and you know, Kyle he's a very positive and good intentioned guy, and he's just trying to relate to David, but
Mhm.
he does not pick up what David's putting down about, no, actually my situation is a little bit not where I would want it to be, and this is going to be my Survivor sob story about the Chad and the tribe.
Yeah.
So the way that Kyle is kind of being edited, I see him being the person who misreads, who doesn't play his idol or doesn't align with the right person. You know, I could see Thomas maybe taking advantage of him in some way,
Yeah.
where Kyle reads Thomas as a not evil person and Thomas throws him under the bus somehow. One thing I will be interested to see is how the California Girls Alliance holds up or doesn't, because it seems, frankly, quite shaky on the existing Purple tribe.
Yeah.
But none of them will have any of their other allies after this episode.
Good point. Yeah.
Joe will not have Eva to rely on, and Thomas won't have Bianca.
Mhm.
So I could see that becoming, you know, a phony alliance becoming a real one. I could also see it totally shattering.
Yeah. That's a good point. My big thing, the way that I would think that the California Girls Alliance would break up would be if Shaheen decides that he wants Thomas out sooner rather than later. Because Joe's not going to go against it. I don't think Thomas is going to go against it. I think Thomas could fool Kyle into thinking that he's flipped, but I don't think he actually would. I think Shaheen could bring in the two of them and be like, hey, we should go after Thomas, and then after that, bring Joe in and convince Joe that's what he wants to do. Because, you know, Shaheen's a debate professor. I believe he can get basically anybody to think the way that he does and make them believe that they came up with the idea themselves. I think he's good enough that maybe I have too much faith in him, but I really don't think I do. I think he's just kind of that good. So
Shaheen's my winner pick from episode 1. So I would like to believe that Shaheen has that ability. And I could also see that if the tides start turning against Thomas, for example, be it because Shaheen likes Thomas or because Kyle and Camilla struggled to connect with him, and maybe it comes out that Camilla has an extra vote or Kyle has an advantage or so forth. You know, I see Shaheen going with whatever the new majority is.
yeah, no, I agree with that. But we'll just have to see. All right, Greg. Do you have any final thoughts on the episode? Anything you want to mention? Or
We've covered a lot of ground.
yes, we have.
I will just say that I am really excited for what I believe is the first real tribe swap of the new era. Am I correct in saying
Survivor 45 had one.
Perfect.
but that's still 1 out of 8 seasons, or 1 out of 7 seasons before this one. So it's still pretty huge.
Well, I think, I guess, circling way back to one of the very first things that we talked about all episode,
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is a great step in moving Survivor back in the direction of introducing parity between the tribes.
Yeah.
The free fall of the Green tribe, it just doesn't make for good television. I understand, even though this was one of the wildest tribal councils we've seen, I understand why IMDb liked this episode less than the others, because it's not fun to watch the same tribe get walloped over and over again. It's not fun to see a player just get absolutely screwed over by nothing more than probabilities.
Yeah.
And especially one who seems like a likable and, potentially a really good player like Justin was.
And he had pizza on his shirt. So, like, how can you root against him?
He's the pizza boy.
Yeah.
we need a pizza boy winner. I don't think we've had a pizza boy winner of Survivor since Fabio.
Wait, how is Fabio a pizza boy? Explain that.
Oh, he's just got the energy.
He's got the sauce. I gotcha. Yeah.
He's a well, we've had some crusty winners too.
I.e. Gabler and Bob. Yeah.
So I am excited for that. These are some fascinating swapped tribes.
Sure.
Especially, I could see it being now a walloping of the new Orange tribe. But you know what? We're probably 2 or 3 episodes away from the merge anyway. Yeah. So it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, it will be fun to watch. Until then, thank you so much for joining me, Greg. And thank you to everybody who's listened. And I'll see you later. Have a good one.
Thanks for having me, Joey.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
of course.